Now to Los Angeles, to the body found in the trunk of a Tesla belonging to a well-known singer. The body identified as a teenage girl missing for more than a year. Well, tonight, investigators are now at the home where that singer had been staying, removing several items.
It's a little weird to see a car that I haven't seen here for a long time. Had a big dent on it, had a Texas plate on it, so all a little odd.
On September 8th, 2025, the world woke up to a nightmare painted in the most shocking shades of Hollywood horror. The headlines screamed what everyone already feared. The decomposed remains of 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez had been discovered in the front trunk of a Tesla, a vehicle registered to none other than rising music sensation David, real name David Anthony Burke. The car, abandoned and reeking, had been towed from the upscale Bird Streets neighborhood, a place where the rich and infamous hide behind gated drives and security cameras. But here's the twist that sent the internet into a frenzy. The FBI's raid on David's Hollywood Hills home turned up nothing. No bloodstains, no weapons, no forensic evidence tying him to the scene of the crime. The only things seized were electronics, computers, phones, hard drives, all of which, according to insiders, contained zero communication with Celeste after her disappearance in April of 24. So here's the question that's haunting everyone tonight. If David didn't do it, who did? And why was Celeste's body left in his car like a grotesque calling card?
That's her in my classroom, in front of this poster right here. She's been missing since I taught her. So when I taught her, she met this dude on social media. He was a rapper in LA. He came and got her. She ran away from home. She was gone for like a month. The cops found her in Hollywood, brought her back to our school. She came back to our school, kind of told people this story. She disappeared again in May of that year. And then I found out yesterday that she's now in that rapper's car.
Let's rewind to that chilling morning when the tow yard workers first caught the stench. The Tesla had been sitting there for days, its Texas plates and distinctive dent making it stand out like a sore thumb in a city obsessed with luxury. When authorities pried open the trunk, what they found wasn't just a body, it was a puzzle. Celeste had been missing for over a year, her family frantic, her face plastered on missing person posters across Lake El. But the timeline? It's what's making this case even more sinister. The car was abandoned in early September, yet Celeste vanished in April of 24. That's months of silence, months of her family begging for answers, months of a vehicle sitting somewhere in Hollywood untouched, unnoticed, until someone decided it was time for the world to see what was inside. Was this a setup? A calculated move to frame a man whose lyrics about romantic homicide suddenly felt a little too real? Or is there something even darker lurking beneath the surface? The media storm that followed was immediate and brutal. David's tour dates vanished from websites overnight. His label Interscope hit pause on the deluxe release of his album Withered, a project that had been riding high on the back of his Gen Z anthem, Romantic Homicide. Fans who once screamed his lyrics at sold-out shows were now dissecting them for clues, their devotion curdling into suspicion. His social media went silent. His subreddit, once a hub for superfans, was locked down amid accusations that David himself had been deleting posts that dared to ask the hard questions. And then there were the tattoos, Celeste inked on her right index finger, the same design David suddenly sported in photos from September 24, months after she went missing. Coincidence? Or a chilling signature left by someone who wanted the world to connect the dots?
Always quiet, nice. She come in like if she buy like a chips, soda, and leave.
And here's where the plot thickens. Just days after the raid, David's manager, Josh Marshall, made a move that raised more eyebrows than a bad Botox job. He broke the $20,000 a month lease on the Hollywood Hills home where David had been staying, packing up belongings in a rush that screamed either panic or guilt. The homeowner, Mladen Trifunovic, told reporters he had no idea David even lived there until the police showed up. So why the sudden exit? Why cut ties with a prime property unless you're trying to distance yourself from something or someone? And let's not forget the Tesla itself, a vehicle that, according to neighbors, had been parked on the street for weeks before it was towed. In a city where a dented bumper gets you a ticket in 5 minutes, how does a car with a decomposing body go unnoticed unless someone wanted it to be found at the perfect moment?
The LAPD spent 12 hours searching a house where David had been living. So big developments this week. Sources say they were looking for blood evidence in the house and the garage. Neighbors remember seeing the Tesla regularly parked at that house, and it was abandoned and towed to an impound lot from the same neighborhood.
The FBI's silence since the raid has been deafening. We know they took electronics, but what did they actually find? Sources whisper that the digital trail is eerily clean. No messages, no calls, no evidence of contact between David and Celeste after her disappearance. Yet the questions keep piling up. Celeste's mother told TMZ her daughter had mentioned dating someone named David before she vanished. The matching tattoos, the canceled tour, the abrupt lease termination, it's a web of circumstantial evidence that's as tantalizing as it is terrifying. And then there's the subreddit lockdown, the deleted posts, the way David's team seems to be scrambling to control the narrative. Is this the behavior of an innocent man caught in a storm, or is there a darker truth hiding in the shadows?
Said that she had a boyfriend.
That's right, that she had a boyfriend and his name was David. And the mother never really got in contact with David, like she never saw him.
She didn't know who the David was.
She had heard of him. And it seemed like the last time that she had seen her daughter was when she had gone out with him.
Let's talk about the Tesla for a second. It wasn't just abandoned, it was placed, parked in the Hollywood Hills, a neighborhood where every security camera and nosy neighbor should have noticed a car sitting for weeks. Yet no one did. Not until the smell became undeniable. Not until the timing was just right. And when the body was finally discovered, it wasn't just Celeste. It was a message. Her remains were wrapped, decomposed, left in a way that ensured maximum shock value. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a spectacle. So who benefits from a spectacle like this? Who stands to gain from David's career imploding in a blaze of scandal? Because, make no mistake, someone wanted this story to explode the way it did. And then there's the music. David's entire brand is built on a persona that flirts with the macabre. His shows feature caskets and bloody handprints. His lyrics dance around themes of love and loss and something far more sinister. Fans once saw it as art, but now it feels like a blueprint. His song Romantic Homicide isn't just a track anymore, it's a haunting echo, a piece of the puzzle that no one can ignore. And let's not forget the timing of his album's deluxe release, scheduled just days after Celeste's body was found. A coincidence? Or was someone counting on the publicity, no matter how dark?
Website, I've gone down these rabbit holes. You know, you look at these lyrics, okay, of Romantic Homicide. I have them right here. He has a line where he says, "In the back of my mind, I you and I didn't even regret it." One of his music videos, I think, you know, he's carrying a casket, or people are carrying a casket. He just seems to have this very sick fascination. When
the LAPD has been careful with their words, calling this a passing investigation rather than a homicide. But let's be real, when a 15-year-old's remains are found dismembered in the trunk of a car, the word homicide is already hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Legal experts say they're waiting for the autopsy, for toxicology, for something concrete before they make a move. But in the court of public opinion, the verdict is already being written, and David's team knows it. That's why the promotion stopped. That's why the tour dates disappeared. That's why his manager is running for the hills. Because in Hollywood, perception is everything. And right now, the perception is that David is either the unluckiest man in music or the mastermind behind something unspeakable. But here's the thing that keeps gnawing at us. If David didn't do this, then who did? Who had the access, the motive, the cold calculation to turn a missing girl into a viral scandal? Because this wasn't just a crime, it was a production. The car, the timing, the tattoos, the leaked photos, it's all too neat, too designed. And in a town built on smoke and mirrors, the most terrifying possibility isn't that David is guilty. It's that he's the patsy in someone else's twisted game. So where does that leave us? With a singer whose career is in freefall, a family grieving a child they'll never see again, and a trail of breadcrumbs that leads not to a single suspect, but to a web of questions that grow more disturbing by the day. The FBI's raid turned up nothing, but the real investigation is just beginning. Because if David didn't harm Celeste Rivas, then the person who did is still out there, watching, waiting, and if history has taught us anything, it's that in Hollywood, the second act is always darker than the first.
We really need answers. The family deserves these answers. There's way too many gaps in this story, and I think we're gonna get there.
Yeah, I think the cops are onto something. Yes.
The moment Celeste Rivas's body was discovered, David's world didn't just crumble, it was systematically dismantled. His label, Interscope, didn't just pause promotions, they erased him. Tour dates vanished from ticketing sites overnight, his deluxe album release was shelved, and brands like Crocs and Hollister scrubbed his name from campaigns faster than a scandal could trend. But here's the question no one's asking. Was this a corporate panic move, or was David's downfall orchestrated from the inside? Industry insiders whisper that his meteoric rise, fueled by Romantic Homicide and a Gen Z fanbase that worshipped his dark aesthetic, made him a target. Rival artists, jealous executives, even disgruntled former collaborators all had motive to see him destroyed. And what better way to ruin a man than to turn him into the face of a national tragedy? The timing is just too perfect. The Tesla, the tattoos, the canceled shows? It's a playbook for career assassination. So who stood to gain the most from David's fall? Because in an industry where loyalty lasts as long as the next hit single, betrayal isn't just common. It's currency.
And that was before he was even charged. There were people who backed off and, didn't want to be associated, didn't want to answer any questions about him. That's what happens in showbiz when you suddenly are the focus of things like this. All those people who are your friends, and go running.
But let's dig deeper, because the music business isn't the only place where power plays turn dangerous. LA's underground scene is a snake pit of alliances and vendettas where street politics bleed into the entertainment world. David's Texas roots and his Teslas, Lone Star plates might seem like a minor detail, but in a city where turf wars dictate more than just territory, they could be the key to everything. The car wasn't just abandoned, it was placed in the Hollywood Hills, a neighborhood where every security camera and nosy neighbor should have flagged it immediately. Yet it sat there, untouched, until the moment it became useful. Was this a message, a warning, or retaliation for a debt David didn't even know he owed? Because in LA, the line between a business dispute and a life-or-end situation is thinner than a razor's edge. And if Celeste's tragic end was collateral damage in a feud David never saw coming, then the real question isn't just who framed him. It's who's still out there, pulling the strings.
People in that neighborhood were aware of this house, and not in a good way. We've heard a lot of people say that there were a lot of noise complaints. In fact, this is really strange, is the latest one was last weekend. Now, clearly David was not there in the house, but somebody was playing loud music, and there was a complaint about noise this past.
And that brings us to the man who's been suspiciously quiet through all of this, Josh Marshall. David's manager didn't just break the lease on that $20,000 a month Hollywood Hills home. He fled it, packed up belongings, severed ties, and disappeared from the narrative faster than a ghost. But Marshall wasn't just some hired hand. He'd been with David for 4 years, controlling his schedule, his finances, his very environment. If Celeste was groomed, if the Tesla was planted, if evidence was destroyed, Marshall was in the perfect position to make it all happen. And let's not forget the security footage, or lack thereof. The Tesla was abandoned in a neighborhood where cameras are everywhere, yet somehow no one saw a thing. That's not luck. That's planning. Whoever left that car knew exactly where the blind spots were. They knew how long it would take for the smell to become undeniable. They knew the media would swarm the second the body was found. This wasn't the work of an amateur, it was a professional job, executed with cold precision. So where does that leave David? A man whose career was built on dark themes and darker lyrics, now living in a nightmare he couldn't have scripted. His label's silence speaks volumes. His manager's disappearance is a red flag the size of a billboard. And the FBI's empty-handed raid? That's the cherry on top of a conspiracy so twisted it makes Hollywood's wildest plots look tame. But here's the thing about setups. They always leave traces. And in this case, the traces lead straight to the people who had the most to gain from David's destruction. Rival artists who wanted his spot, executives who resented his independence, even Marshall himself, whose sudden exit looks less like panic and more like a man covering his tracks. And if David really was framed, then the person who did it isn't just dangerous. They're still out there, watching, waiting, ready to strike again.
And about the ages, this guy's 20, she was about to be 15, right? I mean, this is really wild how they hooked up in the first place, allegedly, and where it went from there.
But let's talk about the timing, because in a case this twisted, nothing is accidental. Celeste's body was discovered on September 8th, 2025, the day after her 15th birthday. Think about that for a second. A young life, already stolen, her final memory tainted by the cruelest irony imaginable. But here's the part that sends chills down the spine. This wasn't just a date, it was a message. A psychological landmine planted for David, a man whose entire artistic identity is built on themes of loss, remembrance, and the macabre. His album Withered isn't just a collection of songs. It's a funeral dirge, a meditation on grief so immersive that fans walking into his shows were greeted by a casket, invited to sign a guest book as if paying respects to the departed. And now, the universe, or someone far more sinister, had handed him a horror beyond anything he'd ever written. Was this a coincidence? Or was Celeste's body left in his car not just to frame him, but to break him, to force him to live inside the nightmares he'd only ever sung about?
It's very clear we're gonna get to the bottom of this sooner than later. Like they are closing in, and it is heartbreaking to see these images of Celeste now, knowing how she came to her end, but to see her at a very young age in this sort of Hollywood circle, you just wonder how it got to that point for her, and you hope the police can solve it.
Because let's be clear, this wasn't just a crime, it was a performance. A grotesque, meticulously staged spectacle, designed to unravel David's mind as surely as it destroyed his career. The Tesla, the tattoos, the timing, it's all too precise, too personal. Whoever did this didn't just want to ruin him. They wanted to haunt him. They wanted him to wake up every morning knowing that the world would forever associate him with the very darkness he'd romanticized in his music. Imagine it, the man who wrote Romantic Homicide, who built a brand on the edge of life and loss, now trapped in a real-life horror story where he's both the villain and the victim. The attacker didn't just take a life, they weaponized art itself, turning David's own creations into the bars of his psychological prison. And if that's the case, then this wasn't the work of a random predator. It was the work of someone who knew him, someone who understood the power of symbolism, who knew exactly how to twist the knife. The most terrifying possibility isn't just that David was framed, it's that he was studied. That the person behind this knew his music, his tour themes, his obsessions, and used them to craft a punishment so exquisite it would follow him for the rest of his life. The casket at his shows, the funeral aesthetic, the lyrics about love and destruction. All of it was repurposed into a real-life curse. Because what's more damaging than a homicide charge? The knowledge that you've been manipulated into becoming the monster they always claimed you were. And if that's true, then the attacker isn't just out there, they're inside his head, a shadow he can never outrun, a whisper in every song he'll ever write again. The question isn't just who did this, it's why, and what other horrors they're capable of when they decide to play God with someone else's soul.
You know what? I can't confirm that. I know that I know the reports you're talking about, and we've been trying to confirm that that they have. But that would be expected. And there have been other artists who have taken down songs that they collaborated with David on, and they've removed them from some platforms just because they have seen what's going on, and until we know for certain, I think some artists will see David as kind of toxic.
But let's not forget the most chilling detail of all, the tattoos. Celeste's ink, the same design David suddenly sported months after her disappearance. Coincidence? Or a signature? Because in a town where image is everything, symbols matter. And if someone wanted to connect David to Celeste forever, what better way than a matching tattoo? A mark that can't be erased no matter how loud he screams his innocent. The timing is just too convenient. The photos, the rumors, the way the story unfolded like a script. It's all too neat. And in a world where perception is reality, David's guilt was decided the second the headlines dropped. But what if the real guilt lies with the people who made sure those headlines were written?
Division is investigating this case. They still have not said it's a
Correct.
meaning that they don't know the cause of death. Obviously, yes, the body was dismembered and was, where the parts were in a bag that was in the Tesla, but they don't know.
The deeper we dig, the more one thing becomes clear. This wasn't just about David, it was about power, about control, about sending a message to anyone who dares to rise too fast, too bright, too unapologetically. And if that's the case, then Celeste's tragic end wasn't just a crime, it was a warning. A reminder that in the shadows of fame, there are forces that will stop at nothing to keep the game rigged in their favor. The question isn't just who framed David, it's who's next. Because if they could do this to him, a man with millions of fans, a record deal, and the world at his feet, then no one is safe. And that's what makes the story so terrifying. It's not just about one singer, one manager, or one tragic loss. It's about a system that thrives on destruction, where careers are built on ruins and legends are buried under scandals. David might be the face of this nightmare, but he's not the only victim. Celeste was just a young life caught in the crossfire. And if we don't ask the right questions, if we don't demand the truth, then we're all complicit in letting the real monsters walk. So here's where we leave you tonight, with a question that's been haunting us since the beginning. If David was set up, who's still out there? And what else are they capable of? Because one thing's for sure, this story is far from over. The players are still moving, the stakes are higher than ever, and the next chapter? It could be darker than anything we've seen so far. So hit that like button, drop your theories in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Because when the truth finally comes out, you'll want to be the first to know. Stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, in Hollywood, the scariest stories aren't the ones they tell you, they're the ones they don't. Good night and stay safe out there.